The lights of Kyiv's press hall glimmer faintly on a grey November morning. President Volodymyr Zelensky enters the room flanked by his ministers, his face marked by long nights of briefings and battlefield updates. The war, now deep into its third year, has reshaped not just Ukraine's front lines, but its sense of endurance. Cameras flash as he takes his place at the podium, his words expected, his tone measured, his message unwavering. He begins by addressing what has become one of the most violent and contested sectors in the country. Pokrovsk, a once quiet industrial city in eastern Ukraine. With the calm of experience and the gravity of fatigue, Zelensky acknowledges what every Ukrainian soldier already knows: the fighting there is relentless. He tells the press that nearly a third of all combat along the front is concentrated in that single area. About 30% of all combat operations on the front line take place in the Pokrovsk region, he says, his voice carrying both urgency and defiance. The remark draws murmurs across the room, a reminder of how the war's geography keeps shifting, yet its cost remains the same. The president pauses before elaborating. The enemy has not achieved any success in recent days, he adds. It's a small but vital reassurance to a nation accustomed to nightly air raid sirens and morning casualty lists. Intelligence estimates, he continues, put Russian troop concentrations in the area between 260 and 300 soldiers, supported by what Ukrainian commanders describe as constant KAB bomb pressure, guided aerial munitions raining down on defensive lines and urban outskirts alike. 50% of all KAB applications, Zelensky explains, are directed specifically towards Pokrovsk. The statement is not meant as mere information. It's both a warning and a tribute to the men and women who stand their ground under near continuous bombardment, holding positions that now define Ukraine's military resilience. The camera cuts closer to his face, the expression that has come to symbolize wartime steadiness. He doesn't shout. He explains in deliberate tones that these battles are measured not only in territorial gains or losses, but in moral resistance. Pokrovsk, he says, is a mirror of Ukraine itself, besieged, battered, but not broken. Zelensky then shifts his focus outward, moving from the immediate war zone to the broader strategic map, the fight for energy, the economy, and Europe's political will. He reminds his audience that the conflict is not just one of soldiers and shells, but of grids, resources, and the will to adapt under fire. I think that absolutely everyone in Ukraine, thank God that in Russia too, already sees, after the results of the last month or two, massive responses to Russian attacks on their energy sector, which makes money for this war against us, he declares. The sentence, translated from his native Ukrainian, captures his dual message that Moscow's aggression is also self-inflicted, straining the very economy funding its campaign. Ukraine's counter-responses, drone strikes, sabotage operations, and increased resilience of its power grid are reshaping the balance of pressure. Behind him, aides exchange notes. Some of these remarks were expected, others go further than planned. Yet Zelensky is deliberate, aware that every phrase carries both a domestic and international echo. He speaks to his citizens' endurance and to Europe's commitment, two fronts as crucial as Pokrovsk itself. A flicker of optimism enters his tone when he mentions Brussels. The European Union's annual assessment, he says, offers Ukraine a glimmer of recognition amid the hardship. A very good signal from President Ursula von der Leyen, he continues, a report on our achievements on the path to the European Union. This report is annual, and this year's is the best in 3 years. Applause ripples through the press hall. For a country fighting for its survival, progress on EU accession feels symbolic, proof that the world still sees Ukraine as part of its democratic family, not a permanent frontline. Zelensky adds, these are signals of progress in various directions. Of course, there will be a detailed report, but the most important thing is that it is the best in 3 years. His phrasing, simple, modest, resonates beyond the statistics. It's not just a bureaucratic milestone, it's a statement of belonging. Even under bombardment, Ukraine continues to build institutions, reform systems, and inch toward integration with the West. The press room shifts again to domestic priorities, defense production in particular, drone manufacturing. For months, Ukrainian engineers and technicians have been racing to expand local production of interceptor drones, essential for countering Russia's daily missile and glide bomb attacks. Zelensky looks directly into the cameras. I said that in the fall, up to 1,000 interceptors will be produced per day, and they will indeed be produced, he affirms. The claim sounds ambitious, but in wartime Kyiv, ambition is often necessity. Factories scattered across western Ukraine, hidden in warehouses and converted industrial parks, have quietly scaled up assembly lines. Volunteers and military engineers work side by side, soldering components, testing software and shipping interceptors to the front. Zelensky acknowledges the difficulties. Of course, this is not an easy story. We believe that by the end of November, 600 to 800 interceptor drones will be produced per day if nothing breaks, because sometimes, as we understand, it flies in. That final phrase, flies in, draws faint laughter from the reporters, a grim acknowledgement of how even production sites remain under threat. Yet humour in wartime Ukraine is its own form of courage. As his briefing continues, Zelensky returns once more to the Eastern Front, to Pokrovsk, and its significance. The city's importance, he explains, lies not only in its position along supply lines, but in what it represents strategically, a buffer between Russian forces advancing from occupied Donetsk and Ukraine's remaining industrial hubs. Control of Pokrovsk would give Moscow a direct corridor toward the Dnipro River, potentially cutting Ukrainian logistics in two. Losing it would mean exposing the central heartland. Holding it means buying time for reinforcements and air defence build-up. He looks into the camera and repeats his assurance. The enemy has not achieved any success in recent days. The emphasis is quiet but firm. Ukrainian sources later confirmed that counterattacks have stabilised parts of the line and pushed Russian assault units back from key approaches. Still, the bombardment continues. KAB bombs, glide munitions, cluster shells. Residents shelter in basements, emerging briefly for food or signal reception. Schools have long closed, hospitals function under generator power. The narration broadens to context, describing how Pokrovsk has become emblematic of Ukraine's defensive doctrine. Rather than holding cities at all costs, Kyiv's military has focused on attrition, forcing Russian troops to expend vast amounts of ammunition and manpower for minimal territorial gain. The town's surroundings, now crisscrossed with trenches and cratered farmlands, resemble a modern echo of 20th century battlefields. Drones hover overhead. Artillery duels thunder nightly. In the background, Zelensky's communication strategy remains clear: to balance realism with resolve. He knows fatigue has set in among civilians, soldiers, even international partners. Yet every update he delivers is calibrated to maintain momentum, to remind allies that Ukraine is still resisting, adapting and innovating. When he references drone production or EU progress, it's not bureaucratic filler. It's a psychological bridge connecting daily struggle with long-term vision. The president also understands that his words reach Moscow. The Kremlin, monitoring every briefing, interprets each claim as both morale and message. When Zelensky declares that about 30% of all combat actions are happening in Pokrovsk, he signals not weakness but prioritization, an acknowledgement that Ukraine's focus is shifting to defend what matters most. In strategic terms, it tells his commanders to hold firm and his adversaries that the cost of advancing will be unbearable. Analysts later describe his November address as one of his most candid since midsummer, pragmatic yet determined, laced with operational awareness and diplomatic nuance. Unlike the early months of the war, when speeches often carried emotional appeals, this one reflects a seasoned wartime leader, aware that the audience is as much in Washington, Brussels and Berlin as it is in Kyiv. Behind the scenes, Ukraine's general staff continues to monitor Pokrovsk with satellite feeds and reconnaissance reports. Russian attacks intensify around the city's industrial district. Ukrainian artillery responds from fortified ridges. Western-supplied precision systems, HIMARS, Storm Shadow and others, strike ammunition depots behind Russian lines. Each day brings new footage of devastation, yet the line holds. As the press conference nears its close, Zelensky softens his tone again, shifting from data to humanity. He thanks Ukrainian citizens for endurance, engineers for keeping the lights on, and allies for continued support. His closing line, though unscripted, captures the essence of his leadership, that victory is not only measured by maps, but by survival. The cameras fade as aides escort him from the podium. The room empties, but his words linger. Outside, Kyiv hums under the muffled calm of early winter. Air raid sirens briefly interrupt traffic. Citizens check their phones, then resume their day. Somewhere near Pokrovsk, soldiers listen to fragments of the same speech through static-filled radios, the voice of their president threading through the noise of artillery. For them, the message is simple: hold the line, believe in endurance, and remind the world that Ukraine still stands. In this war of attrition, every factory, every drone, every speech matters. The numbers: 30% of fighting, 50% of KAB strikes, 260 Russian soldiers, are not statistics in isolation. They are snapshots of a struggle unfolding kilometre by kilometre. And as long as Zelensky stands before the nation, reminding them that progress continues, whether through drones, diplomacy or defence, Ukraine's story remains one not of defeat, but of determination.
Кредиту репараційного з заморожених коштів. Скажіть, будь ласка, чи все-таки є якісь...
Казав, що інколи комунікація з місць не відповідає тому, що насправді...
Зберемо такий формат, напевно, відеозасідання з
I think that absolutely everyone in Ukraine, thank God that in Russia too, already sees, after the results of the last month or two, massive responses to Russian attacks on their energy sector, which makes money for this war against us.
масовані відповідь на руські атаки по їх енергетичному сектору, який заробляє гроші на цю війну проти нас.
A very good signal from President Ursula von der Leyen, a report on our achievements on the path to the European Union. This report is annual, and this year's is the best in 3 years. These are signs of progress in various areas. Of course, there will be a detailed report, but the most important thing is that it is the best in 3 years.
В різних напрямках, безумовно, буде детальний звіт, але найголовніше, що він найкращий за 3 роки. Я тут хочу подякувати нашій.
I said that in the fall, up to 1,000 interceptors will be produced per day, ours, and they will indeed be produced. Of course, this is not an easy story. We believe that by the end of November, 600 to 800 interceptor drones will be produced per day if nothing breaks. Because sometimes, as we understand, it flies in.
Буде 600-800 вироблятись дронів-перехоплювачів на добу, якщо нічого не зірветься, тому що іноді, ми розуміємо, прилітає.
Pokrovsk. The enemy has not had any success in recent days. About 30% of all combat operations on the front are taking place in the Pokrovsk region. Moreover, 50% of all KAB applications are directed specifically towards Pokrovsk. So you understand how difficult it is. In Pokrovsk, as we told you, there are several hundred Russians, by between 260 and 300 people.
Ви розумієте, як наше непросто. У Покровську ми говорили вам пару сотень людей, вважають наші від 260 до 300 русських.